Let's revive and swatch this 1945 Nailscraft nail polish in the shade Violet. This one came from a collection of 14 different flower-inspired shades. I'm lucky enough to have 9 of them, most of them being revivable, so we're gonna have fun fixing them up this summer. This one will be a little trickier to revive since it looks like the bristles are falling out into the polish, so we'll have to remedy that. Just in opening the bottle, I can feel that the bristles won't follow the cap, but it is what it is. I didn't expect them to be intact anyways. Now the brush wand is interesting since it's not metal. During World War II, a lot of brands didn't use metal for their brushes and plastic wands weren't yet standard. This one appears to be a very tightly rolled paper, fortified with something that would keep it from being porous. I won't be putting this back once we revive the polish, but rather I'll bag and tag it. Now we'll focus on getting these bristles out. We'd be struggling to try and pull them out while the polish is still dry, so we're going to put a little thinner in, just enough to soften the top layers of the polish. It's important to not put too much in because we don't want the bristles to scatter. We'll let this soak overnight and check back in the morning. It's now the next day and the polish drank up that thinner, but the bristles stayed exactly where I wanted them to. Now we'll take my precision tweezers and pull them out. Do you guys think I'd get a community violation if I were to pronounce the tweezer brand? I better not test it. As I pull these camel hair bristles out, I'm placing them in a little espresso cup. They'll come back into play in a moment. They're really sticky with polish, so you're watching me struggle to get them off the tweezers. If I leave a few stray ones behind, I'm not too worried about it. Stray bristles in polish from any era will typically just sink to the bottom, so they aren't much of a threat for having a clean application. I don't see any more strays, so I think we're good to move on. With my bristles collected in my espresso cup, I'm gonna go ahead and rinse them with thinner, since I don't want the polish that is stuck to them to be wasted. With the bristles now washed, I can take the diluted polish and put it back into the bottle. I save all of my droppers from the numerous Seche Restore bottles I go through for occasions such as this. And I don't really have to worry about transferring any bristles back in since they aren't prone to getting sucked up into the narrow dropper opening. I know at this point you may be thinking that I over-thinned it, but when polish is dried out, it's super concentrated. When this thinner gets fully absorbed, you'll see that it will be a lot thicker. There's a common misconception that if you thin polish, it will dilute the color. You can only dilute the color if you're adding thinner to a polish that doesn't need to be thinned. As long as you are taking it back to the consistency it should be in, you're not going to dilute the color. If you do over-thin a polish, you can take the cap off and let the excess solvents evaporate. I gave it a good stir, but there's still a hard chunk on the bottom, so we'll give this another night to continue to absorb the thinner. Okay, we're on stirring day 2. I'm able to get to the bottom on one side now, but there's still 2 corners that are pretty solid, so I'll stir what I can, and then we'll have a third day of stirring. Unfortunately, only time and more thinner can break that up. Here you can see the undissolved polish. It's darker than what is fluid. We're going to add about half a dropper full of thinner, and then give it a quick stir before we finish up for the day. And now we're back for another day of stirring. Despite all that thinner, look how thick the consistency is. The polish is moving slowly, so we may need to add more thinner. Now that my stir stick is sinking into what was impenetrable yesterday, we'll be able to swatch this today. I'm making sure all this titanium white that is on the bottom is stirred in properly before we get there. But since this polish is so dark, there's really not much to stir in. I should mention that I've chosen not to use the vortex today, since the cap gasket isn't as soft as it once was. So if I use the vortex, I'd be getting polish into the cap threads, and I don't feel like dealing with that mess. I've stirred enough, and I'm so excited to swatch this, so let's do it. I finished an Essie top coat recently, so I've cleaned the brush for use with this polish. And oh my Lanta, this has incredible one-coat coverage. But we're gonna do one more for perfection. This reminds me so much of the original OPI Lincoln Park After Dark from 2005, before it became more cool-toned. If you can find a green label bottle of that, I bet they're pretty close. But let's throw this under the brighter light so we can inspect the plummy undertones a little better. And yes, we skipped top coat since for the most part antique polishes don't need it unless there's bumps to cover up. But this is essentially the color you'd see on a sunny day outdoors. And then I'll show you how it looks nearly black at my work table at the end. You may be surprised that a 1940s woman would wear such a dark color, but this sort of vampy tone was the most in color of the 40s. It would become popular again in the 70s, go out, and then was huge again in 1994, and then it came back again in the mid-2000s. So it's pretty classic at this point. Let me know your thoughts on this revival in the comments below, and if you'd like to see more, be sure to follow.